Hey everyone, hope you are doing great. Today's story follows Anya, a young girl struggling with self-doubt in a world full of pressure and comparison. As she learns to trust herself through small, honest steps, Anya discovers that true confidence comes from within. She lay on her bed long after the moon had climbed high into the night sky. The soft hum of her phone vibrated against the wooden floor, its light pulsing in the dark like a distant star. Outside, the world was settled into its late-night stillness, but inside her mind, thoughts raced in circles. She watched the digital chatter of friends posting stories about exciting trips, big achievements, and perfect moments, snippets of other people's lives that seemed effortless, as though they were born into endless celebration. A tightening formed in her chest. Why did she feel so left behind? Why did her own life feel so ordinary? She sat up and pulled her knees close, hugging them against her chest. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The glow of a street lamp outside filtered through the curtain, casting shifting patterns on the wall. Each movement of the light reminded her of how constantly things changed. Yet here she was, stuck in comparison. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe slowly, guiding the air in and out. She reminded herself that everyone's journey was different, but the comfort of that thought felt distant, like a book she had set aside long ago. Still, in the steady rhythm of her breath, she sensed a tiny flicker of calm. Maybe she could find her way back to believing in herself, one breath at a time. When she drifted off into sleep, it was with the echo of that thought humming in her mind. She dreamed of a child in a park, wobbling on a bicycle with training wheels. In her dream, the bicycle glided smoothly until the training wheels lifted, then lurched off balance. The child's face pinched with fear, and the bike tipped. She saw herself in that child's eyes, afraid of falling, afraid of failing. Then, as in her memory, the dream child straightened, took a deep breath, and pedaled forward. The wind rushed past, and the smile that broke across the child's face was unguarded and pure. She woke with a start, her pillow damp with tears. She hadn't realized she'd started to cry. But in those tears was something else, the promise of a spark that had once been hers. The next morning, the alarm buzzed on her nightstand. At first, she hated it. Slept in the haze of dreams, she reached out, silenced it, and lay still. Her heart still felt heavy with self-doubt. She thought of the glowing bicycle memory, of how small wheels falling away had meant freedom. She whispered to herself, "You can do this." She swung her legs over the side of the bed, feeling the cool floor beneath her feet. It was a simple act, almost invisible. But at that moment, it felt like the first real choice she had made in weeks. She drew the curtains back to greet the morning sun. Light spilled into the room, chasing away shadows. Everything looked a little sharper. The scattering of books on her desk, the photograph of her with childhood friends pinned above it, the faded poster from a music concert she had attended years ago. Each item was a piece of her story, a reminder of places she had been and things she had loved. She inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of fresh air drifting through the open window. Maybe, she thought, confidence could start here, by noticing the simple things that belonged to her. Deciding to keep her momentum, she slipped into her shoes and stepped outside. The air was crisp and cool after last night's rain. Droplets clung to leaves and petals, sparkling under the rising sun. She paused to watch a single drop roll slowly down a leaf, gathering momentum before it fell. She imagined her doubts like those droplets, clinging, then eventually releasing. She let herself breathe in the damp earth and the faint scent of jasmine from a nearby bush. A bird landed on a low branch and tilted its head, as if curious about her presence. She returned its gaze with a small, genuine smile. She had taken another step into the fresh morning and a fresh state of mind. At a small cafe on the corner of her street, she ordered a cup of tea. She felt shy, as though everyone around her knew the storm of thoughts that had battered her confidence. She sat by the window, cradling the warm mug and watching steam spiral up like a wisp of hope. Each sip grounded her in the present moment. She realized that believing in herself didn't require grand gestures. It could begin here with a cup of tea and a quiet promise to keep going. Later that day, back in her room, she cleared her desk. She opened a blank notebook she had bought last month, hoping to write a story one day. Today, however, she decided to begin with herself. She placed her palm over her heart and took 3 slow breaths. She reminded herself that her thoughts did not define her worth. She reminded herself of that bicycle memory, the scrapes, the tears, the fierce determination to try again. She wrote down the word courage in big letters across the page, then underlined it. She allowed herself a small smile. She felt a shift, as if a foundation was building beneath her feet, brick by brick. Her mind returned to a goal that had hovered in her thoughts for weeks, a scholarship application that could open doors to new opportunities. The deadline was near, and she could no longer avoid it. She opened her laptop and stared at the questions on the screen. Tell us about a challenge you overcame. What are your aspirations? How will you contribute to our community? Each sentence felt heavy, like a boulder she had to move with bare hands. Doubts whispered that she was not worthy, that her achievements were too small. She almost closed the tab. Then she closed her eyes and pictured herself as that child on the bike, having fallen but still determined. She opened her eyes again and let her fingers hover over the keyboard. She typed one simple sentence: I believe in the power of persistence. The words felt honest and strong. She paused, reread them, and felt a flicker of hope. Over the next 2 days, she worked steadily. She wrote paragraphs, then rewrote them, shaping her experiences with genuine emotion. She described how organizing a small fundraiser at school had taught her leadership, how volunteering at the local shelter had shown her empathy, how staying up late to study for a difficult exam had instilled discipline. She wrote not to impress, but to share her story truthfully. When she faltered, she returned to her quiet notebook. She wrote notes to herself. Your voice matters. Mistakes show that you're learning. You have a unique view of the world. Each note was a small act of kindness toward herself. One afternoon, she felt the familiar tug of comparison again and found herself scrolling through social media. Images of friends traveling, classmates getting awards, strangers living perfect lives. She felt the tightness in her chest returning like an old friend she never wanted to meet again. She set her phone down and walked to her window. The same tree she had watched that morning stood tall, its branches swaying in the breeze. She noticed the birds now fluttering from branch to branch, each one following its own path. She reminded herself that her journey did not have to look like anyone else's. She took a deep breath and closed the window, shutting out the noise. She chose to focus instead on the quiet confidence growing inside her. When she submitted her application, she exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. It felt vulnerable to send her dreams and fears out into the world, but she had done it. She had shown her authentic self with all her imperfections and hopes. That night, she lay in bed and thought of how far she had come in just a few days. She realized that belief in oneself was not a finish line. It was a constant practice, a gentle habit formed through kind thoughts, brave actions, and honest reflection. A week later, an email arrived in her inbox. The subject line read, "Invitation to interview." Her stomach tightened as she clicked it open. She read each line carefully. They had selected her for the next phase. Joy and fear intertwined in her chest. She closed her eyes and felt the ground beneath her, steady and strong. She thought of the small steps that had brought her here, the morning walk, the notebook entries, the moments she chose hope over fear. She replied to confirm her availability and gave herself permission to feel proud. On the day of the interview, she dressed in clothes that felt comfortable and true to herself. She looked in the mirror and saw someone who had weathered doubt but kept going. She practiced her breathing before she left, inhaling confidence and exhaling hesitation. At the interview room, she greeted the panel with a genuine smile. Their questions were thoughtful, inviting her to share her passions and values. She spoke about her dream to give back to her community and her belief in uplifting others. With each answer, her nerves settled, replaced by a firm sense of purpose. She remembered telling herself that her voice mattered and found the courage to let it shine. When the interview ended, she thanked them and stepped out into the hallway, heart light with accomplishment. She knew the outcome was still unknown, but she had given her best. In that moment, believing in herself had meant showing up, speaking her truth, and embracing vulnerability as strength. That evening, she sat by her bedroom window once more. The city lights stretched out below her, each one a small beacon of life and possibility. She thought about every step she had taken to come here, from the trembling bicycle rides of her childhood to the small promises she made each morning. She understood that believing in yourself is not a single moment of triumph, but a tapestry woven from thousands of tiny threads, choices to rise after a fall. Words of encouragement whispered inwardly, acts of courage in the face of fear. She picked up her notebook and wrote one final entry for the day. I am enough. I deserve my dreams. I trust my journey. She closed the book and placed it on her nightstand. Lying back on her pillow, she felt a gentle peace settle over her. She had learned that self-belief is a journey without end, one that grows with every act of kindness we show ourselves and every step we dare to take. She closed her eyes, carrying that knowledge into sleep, ready to greet tomorrow with an open heart and unwavering faith in herself. Anya's journey reminds us that believing in yourself isn't something that happens overnight. It's a choice you make every day. It's found in the quiet courage to keep going, even when you're unsure. In a world that constantly compares and questions your worth, the most powerful thing you can do is trust your own voice. Like Anya, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to start. Be kind to yourself. Take small steps. And remember, the belief you're searching for has always lived inside you, waiting for you to notice it, nurture it, and let it shine.